Thank you very much for being here. My name is Leon Lemoy. I'm Fire Safety Rep for OPWDD, and this does count as your annual refresher. Today we're gonna talk about a lot of different subjects, but primarily, if you look on the screen, you see the term "keep looking while you're cooking." Now, why do you think we would have to have that one up there this time for the annual Fire Safety Refresher training? Why do you think that would be the case?
Fires that took place.
Fires.
Walking away.
Yep, and people walking away. And really the thing is it's just not fires. Yes, there's a big impact with fires, we know that. But it's those unplanned evacuations. What am I talking about when I say unplanned evacuations?
Popcorn in the microwave.
Exactly, exactly. And there's, it's not something that somebody does on purpose. I would never stand up here in front of people and shake my finger at them and say, oh, you're doing this absolutely on purpose. It's not that. There's a lot of things that happen in our daily jobs, and that can distract us and pull us away from paying attention to things that are very important. So I just want you to keep that in mind. We're going to talk about that as we go through. Basically, we're going to discuss a little bit of why we're even here. Why do we take time? Why do we have you folks travel to locations to receive training? Why do we even do that? We're going to even get into talking about the value of training a little bit and what that can do to help prepare us for actual emergencies that do happen. We're going to talk about the impact of fires, because a lot of times maybe we don't realize what the actual impact is, or what the impact of an unplanned evacuation is, or something of that nature. So say the popcorn does go off in the microwave, it smokes up, the alarm gets activated. We're going to talk about what really happens during that time and what kind of an impact that does have. We'll talk about unplanned evacuations, cooking safety in general. We're going to talk about grill safety too, because it's something that we do in the summertime or when the warmer weather is here. And then we have Fire Safety Jeopardy, which is a little bit more fun than just sitting here and going click, click, click through the slides. This gives us an opportunity to kind of interact a little bit and have a good time with that. So let's get going and press on here. Why we're here. All right, now we've done studies in OPWDD. The United States does studies. One here is from the National Fire Protection Association saying that there's 166,000 fires involving cooking equipment every year. And you can see by looking at the screen that the deaths and the injuries associated with this are astronomical. I mean, really, when you think about it, one death, one injury is way too many. And we need to keep that in mind as we're talking about it. So why do we think that cooking plays into this statistic in a big way? Why do you think that might be the case? Absolutely. It happens a lot. People put stuff on the stove and walk away. So let's look at a situation where we're going to actually watch a kitchen fire kind of ignite, and we're going to listen to what the firefighters have to say about it, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. So let's have a look at that.
Over 50% of the kitchen fires in the United States are caused by oil, fat, and grease fires. People are busy every day. They go home, they start cooking, and something distracts them. The phone rings, the doorbell, they see something on television, the kids distract them, and the next thing you know, they've got a kitchen that's fully engulfed in fire. The burn cell you're about to see will show just how quickly a kitchen fire can occur and spread fire throughout your house.
Let's see. All right, pretty intense video, huh? Yeah, at the end, did you see how everything kind of caught on fire all at the same time? The whole space was full of fire. Does anybody know what that's called? It's called flashover. So what happens is eventually, when a fire starts, it gets enough heat in the room where everything, all the surfaces in the room kind of ignite all at one time. And at that point, there's no hope for life to be sustained in that environment at all. So what makes a kitchen so dangerous for us? What do we think makes a kitchen so dangerous for us when it comes to fire starting? All the flammable stuff that's in there, right, absolutely. A lot of times we cook with oils and greases and things of that nature. We add heat to it, right, and heat contributes to fire generation. All right, what does all our food come in these days? When you go out and containers, right, what are those containers made out of?
Plastic or bags.
Plastic, paper, right, or cardboard, some form of paper. And then what do we accidentally do? Well, we accidentally put it too close to the stove, and before you know it, we can have a situation like that. Look, the United States Fire Administration and FEMA report in 2015 that the fires were high as estimated as 190,000 fires caused by cooking. So if we take that and so we're saying why we're here, right? So we talked about national statistics. We looked at them again here, a little bit different. This is focused primarily on cooking. And then we bring it down to us in New York State, and you can see if we apply the same factors that they applied to it, we end up with 27,000 fires caused by cooking every single year in the New York State. So imagine what that's like for us in OPWDD and our resources. Because we've got a lot of houses, right? How many people here actually work in a residence? So everybody in the room does, so you know what I'm talking about. And a lot of factors come into play, a lot of things happen. When we look at OPWDD, one of the things that we try to do is we try to get this data. So we go out every year and we do this thing called the FSAT. Has anybody ever heard of an FSAT before? All right, primarily it's focused at house leaders and above, right? And so what we do is we send out a survey, and the survey has these key components on there. So we look at national standards, like I mentioned. We bring it down to New York State level, right? Statistics, not standard statistics. And then we send it out to our houses and our dayhabs and things like that. And we try to get feedback, and that drives the training like what you're going through right now. So we know that, this year we had a big issue with such and such, so then we put that into the training for the following year. The surveys, like I said, are given to leadership. Issues are identified. And then just because we send out a piece of paper, it doesn't mean we just let the paper go. We actually go out and do a 10% blind audit. So does anybody know what that means when I say a 10% blind audit?
They don't know you're coming, is it?
Yeah, they don't know we're coming. So we take 10% of the houses that we send those resources to, those surveys, and then we actually go out and visit and say, okay, you said this was a problem. And then we go and look at that and go, yeah, absolutely right, that was a problem. You said this wasn't a problem, and then we go out to the areas and we go, oh yeah, that's still a problem. It just wasn't listed on the survey. And that gives us as accurate information as we possibly can get. So in 2017, right, we sent this out, we did all the surveys, and we ended up with 2 really high issues outside of the cooking fires. And we believe, or the cooking emergencies, we believe that these help draw people towards making those mistakes in the kitchen. So we'll talk about that a little bit here. The first one, plans do not reflect specific staff responsibilities. So when we talk about fire plans for our houses, how do you know what you're supposed to do in the event of an emergency or fire? How do you know?
In our fire book.
It's in your fire book. Okay, so what is it? What is that? Give me some more details about that. What is it? What does the fire book tell you?
Well, you're assigned a letter, and that letter dictates your responsibilities upon any kind of emergency.
Okay, so staff A, if you're staff A or staff 1, depending on how you do it, right? So you might be assigned to what one day when you're there? What might be some of the responsibilities that you have to take care of?
For fire?
Yep.
It would be evacuation, timing, grabbing the phone,
Okay.
activating the whole thing.
Right, so it can be a number of different things that you can
Sleeping
be called on, right? Now, anybody here ever been mandated? Yeah, just a couple of you, right? Anybody ever been mandated 2 times? Yeah, more than likely. Anybody been mandated to another house? All right, so I'm getting a lot of nods and agreements here, all right? So well, my point is that these plans are very important. And if they don't outline the specific responsibilities, if you get mandated to another house, or you get mandated another shift where you're not fulfilling your normal responsibility, if your specific responsibilities aren't outlined on that plan, that can cause a problem in the event of an emergency, okay? And that's why they're so important, and this stood out. The other thing is not all staff are up to date on this specific training. Now, I know you have to come here at your own time a lot of times to get the training. I'm with you there. But why might that be a problem? Why might people not attending this class be a problem when it comes to fire safety? Pardon?
Not knowing what to do and all the upstate things that we have to do.
Absolutely right. Yeah, any changes that take place, we try to tell you about that. We're going to talk about that. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about one of the results of this survey is now we're trying to standardize across the state that evacuation plan or that fire plan, right? So we'll talk about that here in a little bit. So that's something you don't know about updates. Every year we take the trends, like I said, why we're here, national trends down to state trends, down to OPWDD trends, right? So we let you know some of the things that are issues throughout the United States, the state, and OPWDD. And this year is no different. We're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk about battery safety. A lot of people don't even think about it. We're going to cover that. We're going to talk about motor vehicle fires. A lot of times people don't even think about that, but we've had those, and they've happened throughout the United States and the state of New York, so we're going to address those kind of issues too, besides our normal rank and file subject areas. So let's look at this a little bit further. When we're talking about it, our top rated area for improvement equal almost 20% of those responses, staff knowing the plans and the roles. And we've discussed that a little bit already. We've discussed why, if you don't know your specific responsibilities, how that can impact during an emergency. As a result, and I just mentioned a few seconds ago, OPWDD is getting with all the regions throughout the state, and we are issuing out a standardized fire plan. So some of the areas already have this in place. We're kind of just joining them all together. You're going to receive training on it. You're going to know how they work, where they're supposed to be located, and the contents of each one of those. This has been worked at the highest levels because we've identified this as an issue. Okay? So when we talk about OPWDD, DQI are folks that come out and raid our houses, right? They're an authority that oversees everything that we do. They've agreed to it. OFPC, does anybody know who OFPC is? Ever hear of them?
Politically correct?
Yeah, we want
No, yeah, never.
Office of Fire Prevention and Control. That's when they show up. Sometimes you might have seen them. They have the big white trucks. It says State Fire on the side of them. They're actually in a full uniform when they come and do inspections on the houses. Maybe you've seen that at some point or another. They've already agreed with us as well that really we need to standardize across the state, and that's on the way. So there'll be no more complications. If you get mandated to a different house, guess what you're going to know? You're going to know that this is the plan that I need to look at. This is my responsibility here for the position that I'm fulfilling. And even if you rotate to another shift, and I know you folks review your plans regularly. How often do you review your fire plans?
Every 2 months.
Every 2 months, right? Some places the requirement is a month, depending on where you're located throughout the state. So it's something that you look at, right? If there's a new individual that comes to work or comes to live at your residence, what do you do? Okay, you're going to review the plan, you're going to do an actual evacuation, right? New staff, right? New staff comes in. Not that you guys have any kind of turnover or anything like that, right? But new staff comes in and you folks are going to go ahead and work through that and make sure everybody's educated and run a drill as well. So those are some circumstances where that happens. Our second rated area for improvement equaled a total of almost 14% of all responses when we sent that survey out. Training is very, very important. It educates people. I got a picture of a coach up here. Why would I put a picture of a coach up here when it comes to training? Why do you think?
We need somebody to run it.
You need somebody to run the training. Okay. What else does a coach do?
He teaches anyone how to do what they're supposed to do.
Okay, so there's the responsibility to teach, right? Anybody ever had a coach in school or anything like that, or any kind of activity? Yells at you and drills it into you. But is a coach really just there to yell at you and point a finger at you? To encourage you, right? But it's more than that, right? It's to get you to assume responsibility for whatever you're doing, right? That's really what a coach tries to do. Because what does a coach know? Well, a coach knows that training is actually considered a risk control. What do you think I mean by that? Something that controls risk. How can training control risk?
Reduces the risk.
Why though? You're right, you're absolutely right, but why does it reduce risk?
The more you practice, the better you get.
Okay, so the more that my practice, the better I get. Good.
Mindful of different things that can happen.
Absolutely right. I'm mindful of different things that could happen while we're dealing with an emergency, in this case, fire safety, right?
Knowing the right way prevents the wrong way.
Doing it the right way prevents the wrong way, because what happens when we get nervous?
You forget it.
We forget things, right? You know what? I'll tell you a little story right here. I bet you forget stuff even when you're not nervous. All right? Does everybody here drive?
Yes.
Does anybody here not drive? Okay, so everybody here drives. Does anybody have a garage?
Yes.
All right. Have you ever left your house, drove around the block, and went, oh man, I forgot to close the garage door? Has that ever happened to you?
Yeah.
Yeah, some people. All right. What allows you to do that? You were just sitting right in front of the garage door, and you left without closing it.
Get
What?
distracted.
You get distracted. Okay, that's a possibility.
Running late.
Maybe you're running late. You're a little anxious about having to get into work. Good. What else? It's the same thing you do every morning when you go to work. It's the same old routine. We kind of move on autopilot. There's lots of stuff like that. I regularly call my wife after I get to work. I'll call the wife and I said, "Hey Tracy, can you make sure my hair straightener's off?" Right? Right? Yeah, right. So you got the same haircut, right? But the thing is that I don't really do that, just so you know. But it's an example of how we go through life on a daily basis and we're not paying attention. Training helps reinforce that when something goes wrong, or something happens, or even if I'm just doing my routine, I'm going to respond the way I was trained. So what do I got to make sure I do when I train?
Repetitiveness.
It's got to be repetitive, and I've got to make sure that I'm doing it right, okay? And so this study that we've done, this FSAT, has given us information that say, hey, we're missing some of this because some people aren't getting the training. Some people aren't annually coming to the training like you folks are doing right now, right? We update this every year, so it's relevant. The training changes throughout the years. We've made great strides to do that. And it's why coaches want you to train the way you play, because when it comes down to actually being involved in an emergency, things get very hectic very quickly. We're going to look at a couple of videos here that shows you just how bad and how fast fire can spread. All right. So just to give you some other information really quick, and this isn't important that you memorize this slide. This is just to show you something. If you look at these annual statistics that we've had, right, and you can see 2012, right, at halfway through the year, there was 29 fires reported, right? We had 29 reportable fires throughout the year. So if you double that, what's that, 58 fires, right? Annually for that year, 2013, we're down to 35. 2014, we had a little spike for some reason, right? Down to 2015, 24, 2016, 27. Year to date, there has only, in 2017, there was only 20 reportable fires in OPWDD. This system works. This training really works, although, once again, sometimes it seems inconvenient to go to the training. But everybody that gets here, look, we're saving ourselves, we're saving individuals, and we're saving property in the process. So the FSAT system really does work, okay? Just to wrap this up, 70% of our issues were the top 6 issues here. And I just want to talk about a few of these. We know the one about responsibilities, right? So we got to make sure our plans are complete and they list responsibilities so everybody knows what's going on. We got to make sure everybody's trained, right? We got to make sure everybody makes it to these classes. And then your local training at the houses is very important as well, if not more important. The rest of the stuff, we're seeing that staff isn't turning on those vent fans when they're cooking. And that leads to what? Could lead to a fire, right? Smoke. And we know what does smoke do to us. Sets off them loud squawky things, right? And before you know it, we're having to run around and do all sorts of things, don't we? Right? And sometimes that's not very easy, depending on what kind of a house you work in, the level of development of your individuals. All those things play into this factor here. So we know that there's a problem. So every time we cook, we should be doing what?
Put the fan.
Put that fan on, right? Get that vented out. Some places we've even had problems where things weren't installed the right way. The vent fan gets turned on, it actually blows the smoke right out towards the smoke head. Counterproductive, right? So we're taking steps to make those corrections, but always turn that on. Another big issue is power strips. Does everybody know what I'm talking about? Power strips, right? We could talk about power strips for hours, right? Because a lot of times we misuse them. A power strip, now I don't want you to get upset with me here, but I'm going to say something, okay? Is everybody with me? All right, you promise? She said, no, I'm getting upset if I want to, right? All right, got a promise you're not going to get upset with me. Hey, power strips, they're not magic. People think they are, right? It's got that little red button. We can plug everything into that. We can plug New York City, one big giant plug into that. The thing is that they're only rated for certain things. So we've got to use them the right way. And we're still finding that, during these studies, we're finding that some of these things aren't being paid attention to. We're finding power strips outside. They're indoor. We're finding them outside near water. Water and electricity really doesn't mix very well, okay? So there's all sorts of things. Even something as simple as having the right ones that are issued from Word Control, having the right ones that are rated, they have a UL listing on the back of them, have them in the house and have them relatively new. That makes a big difference. It can help us in preventing fires. So let's talk about fires for a little bit here. You know, a lot of us, I don't think, understand just where we're at when it comes to fire safety. Now, I'm going to reveal my age here. I'm 51 years old, okay? So for me, when I say back in the day, I mean way back in the day, right? Things weren't the same as they are now. So let's have a look at a video that's going to help us understand that a little bit more.
Back now at 7:40, you've got a new Rawson reports this morning.
It's an eye-opener. This morning, the fire danger from newer furniture giving you less time to escape in an emergency. Today, national investigative correspondent Jeff Rawson has this demonstration. Jeff, good morning to you.
Neat to see this one. Guys, good morning to you. Thousands of people are killed in house fires every year. In fact, new deadly cases in the news just this week. Survivors always say it happens so fast, there was barely time to get out. And it turns out there is a reason for that. Popular new furniture, the kind of furniture so many of us have in our homes today, actually burns faster, a lot faster, meaning you and your family don't have as much time to escape as you used to. This morning, we're about to show you why. It starts small, but in just minutes, flames can engulf your entire house.
I didn't think we were going to make it.
In an instant, your home becoming a deadly trap.
In 20-30 seconds, it went from no fire in the hallway to the stairs were blazing.
Even firefighters are overcome. And your chance to get out alive is getting shorter and shorter. Research shows 30 years ago, you had about 17 minutes to escape. Today, it's only 3 to 4 minutes. Turns out there's a reason newer homes burn faster. You know the old saying, they don't build them like they used to? Well, they don't build them like they used to. And to show you, we've come here to Chicago. It's a lab where we're going to do a demonstration. I'm wearing this hard hat and these safety glasses so we stay safe. They have 2 rooms built here side by side. The first one is sort of a flashback to the 70s or 80s, the way homes used to be built. Real wood on the coffee table, more natural fabrics. But if you come just next door, this room probably looks the way your home looks right now. Modern furniture, a lot of synthetic fibers, from the curtains to the couch, even to the coffee table. Experts say newer homes can burn 5 times faster than the older ones. So we're going to light up the modern room first and see what happens. Let's go. Within seconds, flames are already shooting up from the pillow. Just seconds later, it's spreading to the entire couch.
The backing on your carpet is synthetic. Your drapes are synthetic. The couch, the pillows are synthetic.
And they're more flammable than the way they used to be.
They burn hotter and faster than natural materials do.
So why do they make it out of that stuff?
It's less expensive. It's the way homes are furnished today. There's no getting away from that.
In less than 2 minutes, the fire jumps to the lamp and the end table. Black smoke filling the room. By 2 minutes, 20 seconds, watch, that chair goes up in flames. At 2 minutes and 40 seconds, it's the coffee table. And then this. Complete flashover. You can't survive this. The fire's coming out of the roof there. Should we leave?
Yeah, let's get out of here.
All right. Jeez, let's get out of here. That was fast. All right, now we're going to light the older home up to see the difference. Are we good to go here?
Good to go.
All right, let's get out of here. So it sparks up. 2 minutes pass and the fire is still barely noticeable.
I'm just amazed. This pillow has been on fire for several minutes now, but it hasn't even caught the rest of the couch.
It could be the difference between life and death, and it's been proven many times.
At 5 minutes, the flames are just peeking over the top of the pillow. 10 minutes, only the corner of the couch is burning and the drapes are catching. At 15 minutes, the room is still intact.
It's been 26 minutes, and take a look. The fire is still mostly contained to the couch. It hasn't even spread to this table. It hasn't spread to the plant or even the coffee table. And the fact that you can see me right now and we can stand here, the black smoke is not overpowering. It's taken this long. You could still get out.
In the end, it takes 30 minutes for the old house to burn. The modern house, less than 3. So what's being done about it? The Furniture Industry Group telling NBC News it supports a federal flammability standard for upholstered furniture, but only if product changes are safe, effective, and affordable. Until then, experts say there's no time to waste.
That's why when your smoke alarm goes off, you don't have time to look around to get your wedding pictures.
Get out.
You get out as quickly as you can, Jeff.
They're
Pretty crazy. When we stop and think about it, we have this idea in our head that you can run back in, right, and save the cat or grab some property. But they keep talking about synthetics. What do they mean by synthetics? What does that even mean? He says that now the houses are furnished and made of synthetics versus real materials. Say that again? Right, it's a created man-made material. What's it made out of? Does anybody know? Plastics and chemicals, right? So when that gets exposed to fire, that does something totally different than stuff that's made out of actual wood or wool or cotton fibers, which back in the day it used to be. And that's why there's such a big discrepancy. There is no more time. So now let's take that and change that a little bit. And let's bring that into OPWDD world. What about you in the houses that you work in? A fire starts in the kitchen because we've said already through our studies that cooking fires and cooking unplanned evacuations are caused by cooking more frequently in our houses. So something happens, something starts. What does that mean for you and the individuals in the house?
You ain't got a lot of time.
Don't have a lot of time. Which means we have to have a plan, right? And what does that plan have to tell us? How to do it and how to get out. What to do first, what to do quickly, right? And then we get outside. Once we get outside, we've got everybody accounted for. What do we got to do? Make the call. Call 911, right? Yeah, well, I know the alarm sounds. I know most of our places are monitored these days, and it goes right to the reporting, and they tell the fire department to respond. Don't take the chance. Don't ever take a chance. Still dial 911 once you get outside. So you can see very quickly, look, injury, hardship, possible death, all sorts of things. Thousands of dollars could be spent on relocating people, moving folks. Let me ask you a question. How many of you want to be relocated from where you work on a daily basis with individuals for an issue? Well, everybody's saying no. I don't understand why. It makes sense to me. Just load everybody up, go someplace else. Why wouldn't you want to be relocated?
Too much.
Too much? Paperwork, good. Did you say, sir?
Well, your shift, it's going to change your whole life.
It's going to change everything, right? And we know that individuals love it when we change routines, right? I'll argue with you that staff loves it when we change routines as well. Because we're used to it. I know where everything is, right? I know where to go to do this. I know how this works in this environment. I know how to care for this specific individual under these circumstances. We change that and do relocation with everybody. That changes all of it and makes things much more difficult. Another thing right here, and I mentioned training as being a risk control. Okay, remember me saying that it controls risk? If I know what to do, I act accordingly. That helps cut down on criminal and civil liability. What do you think I mean by that? Criminal and civil liability training.
Talking about getting in trouble for the fire? I mean, that's basically what you're saying.
Absolutely right. Or not doing something that I'm supposed to. Right. Look, and I don't even want to just say for us, right, that actually do these things. This is for our organization as well, OPWDD. I mean, really, we talk about it, but there's some stuff that can happen, and if we're not following responsibilities, we're not doing what we're supposed to, we're not trained effectively, all of this can contribute to there being some other outcome. And you might not even be criminally responsible for something, But yet, what do we know about civil lawsuits? They come after your finances, right, and things like that sometimes. So it's just something to keep in the back of your mind that even if we don't have a death, which is absolutely horrible, and even if we don't have an injury, which is absolutely horrible, a fire can cause a lot of other impacts besides just those two that we're used to mentioning, okay? And some of that can extend to where there's some more problems for us than we anticipate. So what are some of the impacts on you? So let's say there is a fire incident where you are at work. What's the impact on you as staff? The alarm goes off. What do you got to do, and what could be some of the impact? Okay, you got to start getting everybody out of the house. So what are some? Is there any problems associated with that? Wheelchairs. I love that, right? Because on a daily basis, now you folks come from the same basic region, so I'm sure you have procedures and what you're supposed to do with wheelchairs, but it's different throughout the state. And if I'm not familiar with how to deal with someone in a wheelchair, it can cause a lot of problems. We'll actually talk about that later because that's something else that came up out of our study. Somebody else said something over here, impact.
Shaker beds, deaf people, you gotta know everybody's.
Some people don't want to leave.
Right.
Right, so we get resistance, right? Sometimes people evacuate. So if I'm trying to evacuate somebody out, I'm near a step, there's resistance, what can happen?
Fall.
Could fall. I can get hurt. So there's a lot of things that can happen to staff, right? So let's look at a few of those, right? There's stress. First of all, there's stress. And we know we need more stress, right? Doesn't everybody? Right? No, we're trying to avoid that, right? So training can help with that. We know that injury, time off, disability, all sorts of issues can happen. And some people get hurt and get hurt very badly, right? So we want to try to avoid those things with the training and just to avoid the fire event to begin with, okay? And that might be as simple as just flicking the switch for the vent fan to come on, because then we know we're not going to get the unplanned activation. Because the interesting thing about all this is an unplanned evacuation, if we don't know what the cause of it is, guess how we're responding to it?
Like it's real.
Like it's a real emergency. And as a result, all these things come into play, right? Or somebody in the neighborhood near you or down the road from you in one of our other residences, they have a fire, something happens, they get hurt, who's going to cover? You guys are going to end up covering one way or another. Somebody's going to end up covering from the organization. Planned work, right? Planned work. You schedule how to do laundry. God knows you guys do a lot of laundry, right? Okay? So you schedule that and everything like that. You get one unplanned evacuation that messes everything up. And the whole schedule's off, right? Meals, all sorts of things. Meds, giving meds out. Complacency because of the number of evacuations, right? There's some houses that seem to have more unplanned evacuations or more issues than others. After a while, what do we do with those alarms? Oh, it's just another one. This system's faulty. Okay, guys, let's do what we're supposed to. And out we go. Now, that's not putting a jab on you. That's reality. We're all human beings. It's just like driving away from the house and leaving the garage door open. It's something that we get accustomed to. We don't put the same meaning on it, and that creates complacency. And before you know it, we have an issue. All right? So, what about individuals, huh? What's the impact on individuals? They're all listed here. Some of them, right? Some of them have pre-existing medical conditions, depending on where you work. We have frail individuals. So if we're going to take them out under an emergency circumstance and it's something that could have been avoided, we're actually putting them in danger by taking them outside, right? Disruption of normal operations, I mentioned earlier, right? As a matter of fact, all these impacts are basically the same things that would happen to you and I as staff in this residence, but it's usually to a higher level because of the disabilities that are associated with the folks that we work with, all right? So you think about it, sleeping times, right? That can be messed up, right? Most of them don't like to be disturbed when they're sleeping. There's just a whole myriad of things that happen. And then once we've messed up that schedule, it takes a while to get everybody back on, correct? All right? I don't know if you've ever had to deal with a situation like that where mealtime, what does it mean if mealtime gets put off for a while? What's the impact? No, I got the laughs, but what does that mean?
Agitated.
Okay, so people get agitated for one, right? They're hungry to begin with. What else? What are some other impacts?
Everything gets pushed back.
What do you mean by everything? You're absolutely right, but what do you mean by that?
Bedtime.
Okay. So what goes into bedtime? Is that just I go to bed? Is that what that is? Or
Showers,
Meds, everything.
meds, showers,
Activities.
right? Things that make them comfortable before going to bed, right? So all those things get pushed back, and before you know it, oh, it's shift change time. So what happens during shift change if there's a bit of mess up like this? Is there any problems with that?
It's confusion about that shift change.
Might be confusion at shift change, maybe pertinent information doesn't get transferred over. So we're just talking about this here in the classroom. Imagine what actually happens in real life for individuals and the impact of individuals and staff, okay? One of the things I want to draw your attention to that many times we don't think about, but it's not just the individuals and house staff, it's first responders. Why would I say that there's an impact on first responders?
Who's now that they get ways to save, they're to save us and save the house. And
Right, so they're responding, right? Good. What can happen to them on the way?
something that
Accidents? Yeah, let me show you a very brief one right here. See that truck coming? I know it's kind of small. Yeah, pretty crazy, huh? Now, what's the impact of that for the city or the town or the houses? Right? All these things. Now, I'm not saying that firefighters traditionally go out and do this, because we don't. We're usually very careful. But we're just like anybody else. We're no better, no different than anybody else. And anything can happen. We can get distracted. The thing is that when that bell goes off in the fire station or wherever and we're responding, guess what we think?
the worst.
The worst. When that address comes around, and if I'm half a firefighter as I should be, what do I recognize immediately about the address to the residents that you work at?
That's a group home that has been done many and many a time because, and yeah.
Absolutely right.
That's a biggie.
And not only that, but I know that you're there and you're trying to get individuals out, and if this is a real emergency, you and the individuals are in desperate situations, and I want to get there as fast as I legally and possibly can to help you. That's part of our DNA. And the same thing happens here. But the problem is that if we do this over and over again, we expose them, right? So there's potential injuries. Firefighters can get injured on the way. First responders, motor vehicle incidents and accidents. Response fatigue. Have you ever heard of that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah? It's just like drill fatigue. When you've done 15 drills in a short matter of time, how enthusiastic are you for another drill? Exactly. So the same thing kind of applies here when we're looking at it. And look, these statistics that I'm giving you, we don't just grab them out of the air. They actually come from national studies. This is the National Fire Protection Association, talks about firefighter fatalities. A lot of people go, well, if they don't get in a car accident, there's no problem. Now, firefighters have heart attacks after the event. Right? Or they get hurt, or there's complications from the emergency. So a lot of these deaths and things that we're talking about and injuries that happen afterwards, if you actually look at the fact sheets, you'll find out that a lot of them happen even after the emergency has taken place. So, and the key here to remember is that it's not just firefighters, right? We think firefighters, but a lot of times we have police officers, we have EMS, emergency medical services, that are responding as well. So all of this can come into play. We need to avoid fires and unplanned evacuations due to cooking, because what does that do? It's maybe just popcorn in the microwave, but it's still set off the system. It's still got notified. You still do the evacuation like you're supposed to. And guess who's on the way? We hope they are, but that's why you always do what when you get outside? Always call 911 to make sure they're on the way, because we've had incidents where they weren't. All right? Something went wrong. So just keep that in mind as we talk about these things. And really, cooking fires drives a lot of this. All right? Cooking fires drive. So let's get into talking about cooking safety for a little bit. Look, don't be distracted. Focus on the task. Always turn the vent fan on. And so in our jobs, let's talk about it. What are some things that can distract me while I'm cooking? What are some things that can happen? Telephone rings, go ahead.
Someone comes in the kitchen.
Individual or someone comes into the kitchen. Right?
Doorbell, somebody comes to the house. You know.
Somebody shows up to the house, like fire safety shows up, right, for a random inspections, right? Someone calls you away, right? Maybe there's a behavioral or something like that takes place that moves you away from what you were doing. Now, when we're talking about cooking, is that a big deal? Well, it can be. It really depends on the circumstances, right? So what are those circumstances where I need to be like watching everything that I'm doing and I can't move away and I can't do anything? Frying things, right? We know that a lot of times oils are involved in that. High heat is often involved with that. So we want to make sure that if we're frying, that we've got our eyes on it and we're paying attention to it. Absolutely. That just makes good sense. But what happens if I do get called away? Because sometimes I have to help. What should I
Shut
do?
it off or,
Shut it off. Do you know how many times people, all they had to do was that, and they've safed the area? Now, do we want anybody messing around? No, because of the heat and all that other stuff. But the fire chance is greatly reduced because we've turned the heat and the flame off, all right? Go do what you got to do. You can always come back, right? Now, what's a situation where we might be able to allow things to maybe go for a couple of minutes where I can go do something briefly but have to come back?
oven, something in the oven.
Something in the oven, right? So we're going to go ahead if we're baking something, right? But if we're broiling something, is that the same? You're shaking your head no. What's broiling?
And it's too hot too fast.
It gets too hot too fast, right? We're using that part of the stove that actually creates intense heat to make it seem like a form of frying, okay? So make sure you do that. Now, if you're simmering something, fine, as long as you're not to the point where it's starting to boil. We got to pay attention to that. Check it regularly. Sometimes what we have to do is we have to set a timer. So, you know, I don't want you sitting there looking in the window to the oven the whole time the meatloaf cooks. I'm not looking for that at all right? And that would be kind of silly. Fun to watch, but silly nonetheless, right? But really, we should set a timer that says, hey, you got to remember to come back in here. As a matter of fact, I was working on this very slide when I was at my desk and I got a phone call. And I said, hi, this is Leon, Fire Safety, can I help you? And they said, yes, this is so-and-so from house so-and-so. We just had an unplanned evacuation. I said, really? What happened? They said, well, we had someone that was cooking lunch on the stove and set off the smoke detector due to smoke. I said, really? What was happening? Well, they were making a grilled cheese sandwich and they went into the other room and started watching TV. And after a while, the sandwich overheated, started to smoke, and set the detector off, okay? Something as simple as that. Really, we shouldn't be watching TV when we're cooking, all right? Now look, I, once again, am not going, bad people. That's not what I'm saying here. That person did not go to work today. I guarantee that person did not go to work that day and go, you know what? I think I'm going to burn my lunch, and then I'm going to get everybody to evacuate from the house and have all the fire department show up. They didn't do that. They just simply weren't paying attention, and that's where we run into problems a lot of the time. As a matter of fact, grilled cheese sandwich, I bet there was a little thing of tomato soup on the side to go with it, right? You know, more than likely. All right, so just think about it that way. All right, cooking safety, one thing that a lot of people you hear about. I want to show you a visual demonstration of what happens when we put water onto a very hot grease fire. Pretty radical, huh? Why does that happen? I just put water on a grease fire. Why does that happen? Does anybody know? It would make sense, right? Water on fire, right? Puts the fire out. Grease and water don't mix. It causes a reaction, right? You said it makes it pop. It actually creates reaction. See, here's the deal. Water, when it converts to steam, right? Does anybody know how hot it's got to be to convert to steam?
212.
212 degrees Fahrenheit. Very good answer, right? So at 212 degrees Fahrenheit, it converts to steam. It expands 1,700 times its original volume. Okay? So it goes from a cup, 1,700 times a volume of the cup, and it just blows the grease right up into the air. Well, what does that do? You're saying, well, big deal, we got grease all over. Well, the grease is on fire. And the thing about fire is the more air or oxygen you can mix into the particles that are on fire, Absolutely right. The greater the fire is. So what we do is we actually do that. It expands 1,700 times the radial volume. We throw it up in the air. We spread the grease particles out, and it's like an explosion. Okay? And so that's why we never, ever, ever use water on a grease or a cooking fire. And it's not so cosmic. It's not some, you know, this fire safety and cooking safety isn't really all that radical. It's just kind of thinking about what we're doing and what can happen, right? Things can catch on fire that are away from heat. We think, oh, it's on the counter over here, and we're running the stove over here, so it shouldn't be that big of a deal. But heat radiates out, right? And if it's the right kind of material, like we said, our food comes in what? Plastic, which is basically solid gasoline, or cardboard or paper, and it can ignite very quickly, right? Know what to do if you have a cooking fire. Be smart, right? Don't store anything in the oven, right? You laugh at this picture, right? What do we see in there? Some clothes, right? Somebody's drying some clothes in there. Now look, I know guys, when I was younger, I was even guilty of it myself. We would clean parts of our cars, right? And then we would put it in the oven to kind of bake off the residual. We would do it. I'll tell you a story. There was a lady, a nice lady, she's a little bit older. She got up one day and she was going to go work out in her garden. So she had a cup of tea. She put her Chuck Taylors on, right? And she goes out to work in her garden. Well, it's early in the morning, so there's a lot of dew on the ground. And guess what happens?
Get wet.
Her sneakers get wet. So she comes back in the house. Guess what she does? She puts them in the oven to dry. Guess what happens to them? They start to melt and ignite on fire. Now, a stove is designed to hold heat, so if you were to close and just leave the door closed and turn everything off, chances are you're going to be okay. She did not do that. She took them out. Guess what she did? She burned her hands. Then guess what she did?
Dropped them.
She threw them out on her front porch and she burned her house down. Okay? And I know, and I'm not, I mean, we're laughing about this a little bit because it seems really silly. We have to use things the way that they're designed. If we don't use them that way, especially when it comes to cooking, we can really cause a lot of problems for ourselves and other people. And the thing is that we don't only cook inside. As a matter of fact, a lot of times during the warmer weather, what do? We grill, right? So any problems with the grill? A lot. Why do you say a lot?
I mean, if you use charcoal, the flames, even gas, through those.
Even gas, right? Charcoal and gas, right? There's a lot of problems. This is the problem with charcoal.
The lighter fluid.
Lighter fluid, right? Sometimes we store that in places we're not supposed to. Sometimes we do what with the lighter fluid? Squirt it on it after it's lit. Are we supposed to do that?
Never.
No, it's cool, right? But then that can cause a situation like this, right? What are some other hazards associated with doing a barbecue grill? The food catching on fire, right?
Leaving it on.
Leaving it on, right? Instead of turning it off. Good. You know, if there's people, say that again. Potentially it could. If we get enough heat on that propane tank, we can actually cause a greater problem. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. A lot of times it's something that's just loading up too many hamburgers or too many sausages or bratwurst or whatever you're cooking, right? We do too many of those and it actually creates so much flame that we can't control it. And then you see somebody out there and they do it all the time. They got their little water bottle and they're trying to get the fire to get knocked down. Well, what's the problem? Spreading. It's all grease. It's all grease that we're pushing around. So yeah, it happens. Look, don't grill near buildings. And we do it, right? I guarantee the next time it's raining, drive through your neighborhood and see how many people in the summertime, yeah, you're laughing. What am I going to say?
Take the grill and put it on the porch.
They put it on the porch, right? And guess where all that smoke and superheated gases and fire are going? Right up into the ceiling. Or they'll go, oh, I'll just put it part way into the garage, right? And all that can cause problems. And it can be something as simple as siding. You know, one of the things that we found, even with actual fires in OPWDD, we've had a few, not necessarily caused by grill, but we get any kind of heat on certain kinds of siding, and guess what happens? It starts on fire. And it spreads very rapidly. And guess where the fire goes? You can see it in this picture right here. Straight up. Right to the eaves. Once it hits the eaves, it burns through the eaves and gets right into the crawl space and the attic space. We do have fire protection systems in place, but the idea is to avoid this just to begin with. Not even get to the point where we're doing this. Never have your grill blocking an exit. Never ever. A lot of people will do what? Well, they'll open the door to the backyard, like one on the side of the house, they'll pull the grill closer so that as it's raining out, they can stand inside the doorway and grill, right? But at the time, they're actually blocking the way out. So when that fire starts or potentially ignites, they have that's one less way out that they can go, okay? So we need to pay attention to that. We want to make sure that the grill is free from excessive grease before starting. Now, I'd be willing to bet, and I may be wrong, that if we were to go look at your barbecue grills at home right now, that there's a little cup underneath there or something that catches all the grease, and it's probably got a lot of grease in it. Now, I'm not going to point a finger unless I point it this way, because I know the one at my house is that way as well, all right? But it's just something that we need to pay attention to, and especially where we work, because the individuals, I mean, you always want to be safe, don't get me wrong, but our individuals don't have the same capacities that you and I do to evacuate or self-evacuate most of the time, all right? So just keep that in mind. And so grill safety, a lot of different things. Most grills operate with charcoal, propane, or natural gas. Propane and natural gas can cause problems, right? If we get a leak, we have an ignition source, we can cause an explosion. Propane's heavier than air, all right? So propane will have a tendency to settle down on the ground. So if it's a very calm day and you've got a leak in your propane tank, you may even see a little cloud on the ground. Don't go, that's cool. Get away from it and call somebody, right? But there's usually associated with natural gas and propane. How do we know that that's actually there? Because usually it's hard to see. The smell, right? What's that smell? What does it smell like?
Eggs.
Eggs, rotten eggs, a lot of people say. Sulfur, right? It's actually a chemical called mercaptan. And they add it to it so that you know. Now, when you were a kid, you went, what's that smell? And somebody said, that's gas. You've always remembered that, but that's what it is. It's the chemical mercaptan. Okay? Charcoal, here's a great one. Okay, charcoal. What do we have to do if we use grill of food? Look, you might have a bunch of people you're trying to feed, but overloading that bad boy is not going to help you. Don't use accelerants like lighter fluid and things like that, especially after you've already started to heat. Don't allow propane or gas to build up before lighting. Use long utensils so you don't burn yourself. And then never, ever, ever leave it unattended. And so, to emphasize these grill points, I've got a little video here, and we're going to show you a couple points of that.
Oh! Woo! You gotta go to work?
It'd be cool to have like a stick. It's really so tougher than everybody else. Still? My oh gosh.
Can you guys smell that?
Oh.
Now you know you smell
It'd actually be good if we could get that.
Come on.
Pretty crazy, huh? Every one of us have seen something like that. In one way or another. Alcohol might be a contributing factor, right? But every one of us has let things cook too long, and then when you lift up the lid, what happens? Woof. Well, why? Why does it happen? Do we know? The oxygen gets to it, right? So what you've been doing is you've been superheating those gases. You convert it to incomplete combustion. As soon as we lift that thing open and that oxygen gets to it, boom, it lights on fire, okay? And that gas actually, at that point, kind of explodes in front of you. And look, we know these kinds of things, but once again, it could be something as simple as having to feed a lot of people. We try to overload the grill, and before you know it, you're running into problems. And we saw in that video all sorts of silly stuff that people do. My personal favorite is the guy with the gas can, pouring on thing, lighting the gas can on fire and throwing it on the other side of their house, right? But it's not as crazy as that all the time. You remember the fire we saw where it was nice and quiet, it was like a campfire, and all those sparks are coming off that because of the type of fuel that they use. Those sparks can go someplace and cause a fire. So just need to be paying attention. We regularly place things on the website. The website you can go to, it's right where you get all your basic information. Go to the fire safety portal. In there, we post these alerts very regularly, and it just gives you ideas and basic instructions to kind of refresh yourself and refresh others when it comes to grill safety. The thing is, though, is that we can talk about cooking. We can talk about grill safety. We can talk about unplanned evacuations, and really, fire happens. It does, and sometimes we can't control it. All right, this happened out in this area. Basically what happened is it was nobody's fault. Piece of electronic device overheated. As a result, it created a fire situation. Fortunately, you can see the desk down here. It didn't do that much damage, but it was enough to have to evacuate everybody from the area. So my point here, my emphasis is here, is that we deal with enough chances as it is. We should never be the folks that are contributing to it. Does that make sense to you? So in other words, if I turn the vent fan on, I'm reducing something that an unplanned evacuation. There's a possibility that something else could happen. We work very hard. I know you do all the time. You do your inspections on your where you work. We do inspections. We have other people come in and do inspections. We work very hard to prevent fires, but sometimes they still happen. This happened out in the Sunmount region in the eastern part of the state, all the way on the other side from here. And this was a day hat. There was a wood workshop in the back. People weren't doing things on purpose to make this happen. Actually, the findings on this investigation was undetermined. In other words, what that means is that legally, they didn't know exactly what caused the fire. But it happened in the wood shop. Now, there were reports that there was, wood shavings left on the ground. There were oily rags. No one knows for certain. But once a fire like this happens, what happens to this day hat? What happens to this facility? If it's a residence, what happens? Kind of close it down until it can be repaired. If it can be repaired at that, right? This is back up and operational now, but at the time, it causes a major amount of disruption. And we've talked about that before. I'm not going to rehash what happens to you, what happens to individuals or first responders when we have emergencies and things like this. My only point to you is not to wave the finger at you and go bad people. It's just to say, hey, let's pay attention. Because this stuff still happens. We don't want to be a contributor to it. Now, earlier I mentioned there's some key subject areas that we need to cover, right? Does anybody remember what those were when I mentioned them earlier that we're going to talk about? Talk about vehicle fires, right? You remember me saying that? We're going to look at that, batteries. We're going to look at batteries next because it's something that you don't think about. And when we send those surveys out, the FSATs, we actually ask people to write in, what do you want to know about? What's something that we could teach you in the training that would be helpful? And somebody said batteries. So let's take a look at this video really quick here. And you'll be amazed at this.
Chances are you've got some 9-volt batteries in a box in your house right now and you use them safely every day. But if those batteries are loose, and you may not know this, but you have the potential for a serious fire. However, there's a simple way you can prevent that. Paul Boyd now with some important information that you need to know.
This lovely home outside Denver, Colorado suddenly went up in flames.
I have a fire. I need the fire department here.
Inside your house?
Yes, inside my house.
Hang up the phone and evacuate the residence.
The newly furnished 4-bedroom, 3-bath home with a nice kitchen was completely destroyed. And you won't believe what caused the fire. An ordinary 9-volt battery like these, the kind we all have in our homes.
Never thought in a million years that that could be the cause of the fire.
David Miller made a habit of tossing old batteries in a paper bag in his garage for recycling later, including the 9 volts he used in all his smoke detectors. But little did he know, there's a small but hidden danger. 9-volt batteries can cause a fire in a very unexpected way. It can happen when metals like steel wool touch both the positive and negative terminals at the same time, creating a current. This can cause sparks and heat up the battery.
You apply a 9-volt battery, this is what you get.
Just check out these videos online. 9 volts are used as a quick method to start fires outdoors.
Apparently one of the batteries came into contact with another, and a couple hours later I had a fire in my garage.
Fire investigators dug through the rubble in the garage and found the burned out batteries. You can still see their outline.
You can see the square shape of the case here, and right behind it there's a second battery.
So how dangerous can 9-volt batteries be? To demonstrate, we had Nassau County, New York Fire Marshal Vinnie McManus simulate a fire that can break out inside anybody's junk drawer.
When the battery is in a drawer and comes in contact with other metal objects, that's where that spark can occur and the fire can happen.
First, the drawer smokes and then quickly goes up in flames.
You can see a simple fire in a kitchen drawer, how quickly it can extend to involve that whole cabinet and the upper cabinets and cause amazing devastation very quickly.
There are steps you can take to avoid a fire. First, always keep the batteries in their packages before use. Second, don't carry 9-volt batteries in your pocket. Keys and coins can short the battery. And third, cover the terminals of all loose batteries with electrical tape.
It's a simple solution. It only takes a minute, and it can potentially save your life.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of times we don't even think that this can happen. I don't know about you, but I know the junk drawer at my house, I did go back and went in there and actually moved those batteries, and I had probably 2 or 3 9-volt batteries in there, just loosely. So this is something very real, but we just don't pay attention to it and don't think about it because that's something that we deal with on a regular basis. How many people have an old car battery in their garage or something of that nature? You know, it's just something to keep in your mind when you're paying attention to what's going on, both at your own home, because we do care about you at home as well as where you work, all right? I've been a firefighter for well over 20 years, and I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't have a concern for people, regardless of where they're at home or whether they work. So that's something just to keep in mind. You know, and another thing that we don't think about sometimes is housekeeping. Now, like I said before, sometimes fires happen. And no matter how much preparation we do, we can't avoid every single fire because there's always some unique situation. Here's a unique situation that happened in central New York. It might be a little bit difficult to see, but you can see the electrical panel. You can see that little green area. What that is an electrical line that is oxidized. Does anybody know what that means?
Yeah, the exposure to
the
oxygen builds up a...
Yeah, and you get a little bit of moisture there, you get a little bit of oxygen, you get the electrical current, and you get a thing called oxidation, which actually breaks down the copper metal, and that's what happened here. And it swells up. Has anybody ever seen a battery terminal on a car that's got a white gook all over it? Right? That's an example of oxidation as well. Well, that kind of happened in here. As a result, it superheated the wire, and the plastic on the wire dripped off and actually landed on top of that. Can you see what that is? A dust mop, right? That's in this closet, and it dripped down on there, and it started igniting a fire. And it was enough to set off the sprinkler system in that closet, okay? So it got pretty hot. Here's my point. Could we really have controlled this? Well, maybe the person who installed that wire made sure it was on a little bit harder. We don't know what went into that. So really, we don't have a lot of influence on this other than to have fire protection systems in place. But in where we work and in our own homes, what do we usually do with closets?
Put your junk in there.
We put junk in there, right? Does OPWDD have any junk? Not a lot of junk, but we have a lot of things that we use. Right? I love that response. It's like, well, sometimes, right? But we do have, depends, undergarments. We have a lot of paper towels. We have a lot of cleaning supplies and things of that nature. We have a lot of linen. If this room had been jam-packed with those types of materials, imagine the impact if we didn't take care of housekeeping. We have had fires in OPWDD that were compounded by not having good housekeeping practices. What do I mean by good housekeeping practices? Cleaning, organizing, making sure things are on shelves, okay? So fires happen. We need to know what to do. We've already hit on that. We're going to do a quick little review, and then we're going to get to a game of Jeopardy, all right? So let's take a look at a couple more things here really quick. What does RACE stand for? Anyone?
Rescue.
Uh-huh.
Alert.
Yeah.
Confine.
Confine.
And
Evacuate. Very good, right? And when we rescue, we need to know the plan. We've already covered that. You need to know your specific responsibilities. And also, because of the FSAT, what are we doing? We're rolling out a new program where everybody's going to be the same, right? Alarm. You need to know how to set off the alarms. What a pull station looks like. If you don't have a pull station in the house, what do you got to do? Call. You got to let everybody know the smoke detectors should be operating, right? So confine the fire. What do we do to confine fire? Close the doors. Use the fire doors, right? Do you have in the house that you guys work at, do you have the self-closers on some of the doors? Some of them, right? That's what they're there for, is to protect. You can close that door. You'd be surprised what closing a door does to confine the fire. It stops the fire from spreading and also reduces the amount of smoke. And what do we know about smoke and fires? It can kill you, especially because of all the synthetics, all the plastics that we talked about earlier. That may kill you, more often than not does kill you and incapacitates you before the fire ever gets to you. All right, and then evacuate, we talked about that. Leave the facility, go out to your safe area, right? Does everybody know where their safe area is? Right? You know where that is. It should be marked. Everybody should understand where that is. And you get accountability, and then what? Call 911. Now, I've been harping on that a lot, all right? And the reason is because, especially like today, right? We know the circumstance of today. It's snowy. It's cold outside, upstate New York in general in the wintertime. If you're outside and something went wrong with the notification process, what are you and the individuals doing?
you're getting cold.
You're getting cold. You're standing outside, and the fire department may or may not actually be on the way. And that's something to think about. Always call. Do you know that the 911 centers anticipate in this day and age, because everybody's got a cell phone, right? Some people have 2 cell phones. I've got 2 cell phones, right? They anticipate multiple calls for the same emergency, so don't ever feel bad about that. Get outside. I don't care if you know somebody called already. If it's your responsibility, call 911 to make sure that they're on the way. So yeah, rescue, alarm, confine, and evacuate. Call 911. Once again, that's our basic procedure, and it's integrated into all of your fire plans. A special note for evacuation. Right? And somebody brought this up earlier. I think it was you that mentioned wheelchairs, right? What's the problem with wheelchairs and evacuating individuals or anyone? It's more difficult. Well, why? They're on wheels. I should be able to just zip them right along, right? Say it again?
They might not be in the wheelchair already.
They may not be in the wheelchair, first of all, and they need to be in order for us to move them.
Where are
Good.
you going to put them when you, leaving them?
We're going to leave them outside, right? Is it a safe area where you can do that? You can lock them in. Good. What else? Get stuck in the snow or an environment. Can only help one at a time. Good. I like that. All those are reasons and to pay attention when we're doing this. Another one is, if I'm wheeling towards that door and I'm in a wheelchair, what can I do? Right? I can do that. I can stick a leg out. What happens when we get to the door jam?
You get stuck.
I can get stuck. If I'm stuck in the door with you, what does that mean for everybody else that's coming behind us? Same thing. Not to mention the fact that we just crashed my leg against the door jam. Now, I don't recommend backing up and giving it another college try. No, that's not what I'm getting at, okay? All right? But if we do something as simple as just turn around and go backwards, what happens now? They fold in. Everything folds into the center of the individual or the person that's in the wheelchair, so it makes it easier to get them out through the door. All we're saying is there's been instances, we've actually had an incident where somebody went out with a wheelchair, they weren't put in the chair properly, they fell forward and hit their head on a drill. It wasn't even a real emergency. It was a drill. It wasn't even an unplanned evacuation. It was a drill. And we had somebody get seriously hurt. I'm not trying to over-dramatize that. I'm just simply saying that paying attention even for something as far as getting people out in the wheelchair the right way, taking your time, paying attention to what's going on, practicing it, knowing how to do it will all make a big difference in case of a real emergency. The thing is that we don't only deal with fires, do we? What are some other kinds of emergencies that we could have in this area? Floods, right? You can have flooding issues. Good. What else? Snowstorms, right? Absolutely. I was here not too long ago, was about 6 months ago, I believe it was, 6, 7 months ago, and we had one of these. Does anybody remember this? The tornado that hit the fairgrounds, right? The actual tornado came in and had debris flying all over the place. The thing is that you really need to know your local area and understand the types of emergencies and difficulties that you can get into. All right, be prepared for that, train for that. Take that responsibility on yourself. Don't only leave, if you're not a house leader, don't only leave it to them. Say, hey, what do we do in a flood? You should be training those types of things so you know what to do and how to respond so you'd be better prepared. Another emergency that we often overlook are motor vehicle emergencies. So I'm going to play this, and this doesn't have any sound, so I'm going to talk to you as we go through it a little bit. It's not very long, but I want you to pay attention to the counter up there. Can everybody see the counter? It says 164318. Okay, so we just watched this van turn left from the light. Right now you're looking at it from the perspective of the patrol officer that's in a car. She's in a car right behind this van. So just in the time that they turned the corner, she saw a spark underneath, and you can look underneath and see at the bottom there. So how far are we into this? 1643, we see fire at the end. The smoke's coming out, it's already too much, she's uncomfortable, she's got to get out of the vehicle, right? So she gets out, goes to the police officer, you can see the smoke starting to build. Okay. Rightfully, the police officer says, hey, vehicles are very dangerous, right? Fire can cause gasoline to explode. If you're carrying anything in the vehicle, it can cause it to explode. We transport our individuals daily in many places to day habs and things like that for activities in vans, right? Maybe not specifically this type of van, but we do have those types of vans. Right? Right now, you see the smoke coming out of there and the level of the smoke coming out of there. I will tell you that inside this vehicle right now, life is insustainable. You cannot sustain life in this vehicle any longer. And that's not even until that ignites. Once that ignites, you'll see in a few minutes here, that'll actually ignite, and absolutely there's no hope, okay? But just the color of that smoke, look how dark that smoke is, right? So now, we're about a minute and a half into this actual emergency, and what do you see in front of you? Nothing. The smoke is beginning to cloud everything out. If there's anybody in that van, absolutely, in a minute and a half or so, they're probably incapacitated, more cases than that. So what does that mean for us in OPWDD? If you're associated with vehicles and working those vehicles, either loading or unloading, you need to understand most people are trained on how to get people in and how to remove them, get our individuals out in a rapid pace. One of the big things is, as you can see, as the fire starts to actually whip out of there, and you can see it's like a blowtorch, it's so hot, okay, is understanding that it requires rapid action. There isn't time to discuss it. Because out of everything you see going on here, there was a police officer that saw this happen. What do you think that police officer did as soon as she saw the fire as well? Call for the fire department. Do you see any fire department?
Not yet.
How many minutes are we?
It's about
2 to 3 minutes into it. Most fire departments, at their best, can't get to a certain location within 5 minutes, depending where you are. If you're in a remote location and this is going on, it's over. Whatever's happening is over. So people need to understand, pay attention to their training, and help. And people will say to me, hey, Leon, this is never going to happen to us. Well, as a matter of fact, it does happen quite frequently. And like we did at the beginning, where we went from national down to local, on average, there are 31 highway vehicle fires per hour in the United States. Kills at least one person per day. There's some other statistics there. We don't need to cover them very in depth. But it's 12% of the U.S. fire deaths are associated with vehicle fires. Can you imagine that? Most people don't assign that much importance to it. Vehicle fire trends and patterns are listed in the National Fire Protection Association. That's where we get these statistics from to show us that. And then we can take it even further. And although this was a few years ago, it's to emphasize that it actually can happen, right? This is one of our vehicles. Has anybody here ever been in a vehicle fire? Nobody here?
My car caught on fire as I was getting out, and I had mechanical work done to it. And my boyfriend's friend came out and was like, hey, your car's on fire. And literally within seconds, they opened the hood to try and put it out. It just was gone.
Yeah. And it doesn't take very long. I've actually been in one too. I was in a pickup truck one time going down the road, and it went from normal temperature to like 115 degrees like that. I looked at my friend Brian. I said, dude, we got to get out of here. We hopped out, and as soon as we did, the front of the truck just blew up, okay? It can happen, and it spreads so rapidly. Fortunately, the driver of this vehicle had a lot of presence of mind when the incident happened. There was approximately 12 to 16 individuals on this vehicle at the time. He noticed that there was something wrong, but he knew he was only seconds away from the address that they were going to, and he knew there was a lot of help there. They actually pulled up right outside of the residence. People came out and helped. They got everybody evacuated and no one was injured. Fortunately, because you saw how many minutes go by and that vehicle was totally engulfed in flames, okay? So vehicle fires are very important. If you are associated with vehicles at any way in your job or even for yourself, be aware. If there's training that you can get the training to help you, because these types of circumstances can be catastrophic, okay? Well, we talked about a lot of stuff so far today, huh? We've only got a little while left. We're going to break that up and we're going to do a little game of Jeopardy, which should make it a little bit more fun. It's kind of a review. We do introduce some new stuff, all right? Shouldn't take too much longer and we'll get that set up. But basically, we talked about fire safety in general. We talked about the fact that OPWDD, we are still having cooking-related issues, even though it's something that we talk about all the time. We talked about the training, and we talked about those trends that the FSAC developed, and that we know that we need to maintain our training, okay? We need to do that. We need to make sure that everybody understands their responsibilities, and we need to pay attention to our cooking safety overall, because we know that's a major contributor. And we talked about all the impacts that this has on us, the individuals, and even first responders, actually. And then we covered some outlying things like battery fires. We talked about vehicle fires as well. So that kind of wraps up the formal part of the presentation. So let's take a second. It's going to take me just a minute to go ahead and switch over to the slideshow, and we'll do a little game of Jeopardy, and we'll get our help in the back here to go ahead and decide who raises their hands first, and then kind of keep track of things. Okay. So here we are, we're going to start with Jeopardy. You have the first choice. We have fire safety plan on the left-hand side, fire alarm, emergency types, evacuation drills, and miscellaneous. And so you have first pick. Pick a percentage and let us know.
Me. Let's go with miscellaneous for 200.
Miscellaneous for 200. Here's the question. Must be treated the same as a cigarette. No guess, right? Time is up. The actual answer is electronic cigarettes, okay? E-cigarettes are now treated by OPWDD just like any other tobacco product. So they're not allowed to use them inside the houses, right? They have to go out to the designated smoking area if they're going to smoke. So we still have those designated smoking areas, and we need to pay attention to that. And just like anything, we assume responsibility when we're involved with other people. So if I see somebody smoking inside, or I see somebody smoking in a place that's not authorized, not the safe area, then I have a responsibility to say something about it, just like with e-cigarettes, okay? Any questions? So there's no points at that part, right? So you're going to track which side gets the points, all right? So let's go on to the next question here. All right, so now it rotates to you folks. You folks pick a category and a price.
Fire safety plan 400.
Fire safety plan for 200, here we go. Race 911. Raise a hand if you think you know what that is.
It's our.
What? Is he the first one to hand up?
Yeah.
Okay, first
it's
one.
It's our acronym, what we're supposed to do.
Okay.
You want to know what they are?
Yes, sir.
Rescue, alert, confine, evacuate, and call 911.
I'm sorry, sir, you didn't phrase it in the form of a question. Would the other team like to take it? What is?
Rescue, alarm, confine, evacuate, call 911.
Absolutely correct. You get the points. Very well done. You now have control of the board. I'm sorry, sir. I apologize. All right. So you now have control of the board. Pick another category. Okay. So fire safety plan, fire alarm, emergency types, evacuation drills, and miscellaneous.
Fire safety plan for 400, please.
Fire safety plan for 400. Here we go. Ed's done.
Review your. What is review?
Right, but he raised his hand.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. He raised his hand first. Go ahead, sir.
What is review your fire safety plan?
Absolutely correct. What is the frequency of fire plan review? Very well done. You now gain control of the board.
The same for.
I love the enthusiasm, by the way. Okay.
We're getting competitive.
All right.
Same for 600. Fire safety.
Fire safety plan for 600. Here we go. This is done right after race.
Oh, call 911.
Okay. Raise your hand. The judge in the back will determine who raised their hand first. Okay, and you said? Right. What is call 911? They get another point. Very well done. You now have control of the board. So go ahead and make a selection.
Fire safety plan for 800, please.
800. All right, here we go. This happens when a new staff or individual joins. Right here.
What is do a fire drill?
Let me double check in the back. Yeah, you're going to have to be a little more specific. This happens when we have staff or individual join the house.
What is do a fire's alarm drill?
Okay, let me double check. Oh, hold on a second. No, I'm sorry, it's an incomplete answer.
What is draft a new plan?
I think we're going to have to not give any points for this for either one. Because if we were to combine the two together, review the plan, which is during reviewing the plan, which you said you do a drill as well to contribute to that. So you were both right. I can give you both a point if you want, but it's the same difference, okay? All right, so you had control, so we're going to leave you in control. You now get to choose.
Emergency types for 200.
Emergency types for 200, here we go. Most common cause of fire events and unplanned evacuation.
What is cooking?
What are cooking emergencies? Absolutely right. Give them another point. All right, so you have control of the board again.
Probably ate your breakfast.
Go ahead.
Fire alarm for 200.
Fire alarm for 200. Here we go. Identify this item.
What is a pull station?
What is a pull station? Absolutely correct. Remember that there are different types of pull stations, right? So you need to know the kind that you have available to you if you have those in the houses that you work. Has anybody ever seen one with a cover, a plastic cover over it?
Yes.
You have those. Well, what are those for?
Guys keep pulling.
People keep pulling. Some individuals, a lot of college students, right? I used to work at a college. They like to pull those. So this opens up. But when I open that plastic shield, what do I hear? There is an alarm. Does that mean the system's been activated?
No.
No, I still have to reach all the way in. I need to pull the alarm down. Very good answer. And you get another point. Or you got a point and control of the board. Good steal. All right, here we go.
Does he have his own team?
Okay. Now these are these two.
Emergency types for us.
Emergency types for 400. Here we go. Smells like rotten eggs. Yeah, you were first.
What is natural gas?
What is natural gas or propane smell? Very good. Absolutely right. Another point. Okay. You have control of the board now?
Miscellaneous for 400, please.
Miscellaneous for 400. Pass stands for?
Oh, wait.
Don't know? Any other ideas?
This is the one we didn't get.
This is one you didn't get. Absolutely right. Time's up, right? So when we look at the answer, and we're going to take a second and talk about it. Now I see.
I thought it was for the fire extinguisher.
Yeah.
I didn't know the exact.
Right. I see the nodding. And look, folks, we know that most of you have been through this training many times. But it is important to talk about extinguishers. We need to make sure that we know where they're at, where they're located. We need to make sure we know how they operate. And this is a way to do that. Pass is pull the pin, aim at the base, squeeze the handle, and sweep side to side. If you can remember that, and every time you walk by your extinguisher, think about pass in your head. Because what you'll do is you'll actually pull the pin out, you aim at the base of the fire, because that's going to extinguish the fire. Above it, it's just going to blow the agent all over the place, right? And then that will help extinguish it. You squeeze the handle and you sweep side to side to cover the whole base of the fire, and that should extinguish the fire. Now, really quick, I know we want to, for the sake of time, be through this quickly. When you're using the extinguisher, for you, in your circumstances, based on what we know on how fast fire spreads in houses, when do I want you worrying about extinguishers?
When you're already evacuated and safe.
Okay. Do I want you going back into a structure?
No.
I do not. Okay. When do I want you paying attention to using a fire extinguisher if you have to evacuate? We know race. Evacuate's very important, and you're responsible for individual.
If it looks like you can be confined, if it's a little garbage can fire, you might want to.
If it's really super small,
yeah.
but primarily if you go to leave and it's blocked and that's your only way out, then I want you using an extinguisher. If you go to rescue another staff member, because we know R is the rescue in race, right? or you got to go rescue an individual and there's fire between you and them, that's the only way to get to them, then use the extinguisher. But otherwise, I want you getting out. Okay, I want you to get down low, get the individuals, and get out as fast as you possibly can. Make sense? All right, good deal. So no one answered that one. Was it you that selected? Was it them that selected it? Yeah, I think you have control of the board. So no points for that one. Okay, go ahead and make a selection.
Let's go with emergency types for 600.
600.
Oop, oop.
Right there.
Okay, right here, go ahead.
Silent killer, what is carbon monoxide?
Absolutely correct, right? What is carbon monoxide? What do we know about carbon monoxide?
Odorless.
It's an odorless gas, right? And where does it come from?
Fumes from furnaces and stuff.
Furnaces, cars, anything that burns a fuel, right, creates carbon monoxide. Generators, they all do it, right? And then we have carbon monoxide detectors in our houses. Do you know the difference between a carbon monoxide detector and a smoke detector sound?
Yes, higher pitch.
Higher pitch, some of them have different pitches.
Yep.
Primarily, just remember this. If you hear a beep that's going over and over and over again, one beep over and over and over again, or 3 beeps in a row, a pause, 3 beeps, that's your smoke detector. Anytime you hear 4 in a row, that's going to tell you that it's the carbon monoxide detector and get out, okay? Carbon monoxide is such a danger that people don't think that anything's happening and they're being poisoned as it happens. And I'm not going to get into that, but basically it makes it so your body can't process oxygen. And when that happens, you basically drown to death or smother to death because your body's not able to move oxygen around in your cells. And that's what carbon monoxide does, okay? So make sure with it, toxicity level, even a small amount of it over a long period of time can make you very, very sick. Okay, so keep that in mind when we talk about carbon monoxide. All right, so you guys have the point for that and control of the board. Go ahead and make a selection.
Evacuation drills for 200.
Evacuation drills at 200. This is used to evacuate the facility. You got it first?
What is the safest closest exit?
Absolutely correct, right? And here's what I want to talk about with plans a little bit, okay? All right, so plans in general, look, it's very easy for us to do the same drill over and over again, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what should we be doing if we want to protect ourselves and the individuals better? When it comes to
block a few things, change up a few things.
Change those exits, right? Do a blocked exit drill within in the house that you work in or wherever you work. Even in your own homes, you can do that. So you have your plan and you can pick an alternate way of getting out. But the closest, safest exit is the best means for getting out of the facility. And this is an exceptional class, I just want you to know. Because we've done this before and nobody knows the answer to that, and that was actually very, very well done. So kudos to you, a point, and you still have control of the board. All right, we're not going to argue back here, right?
I know we're talking.
Oh, yeah, all right. Go ahead.
Evacuation for 400.
Evacuation for 400. Minimum frequency of drills.
What is monthly?
I'm going to have to go to the back. Now, I'm sorry, sir, we need more specifics.
Once a month. What is once a month?
Time up, I'm sorry. Very close, right? Some places do them monthly, but here's the minimum frequency is 1 per shift per quarter, which works out to almost monthly. Yeah. Right. And then we also do them when?
New staff or new individuals.
New individuals, new staff, right? So absolutely correct. Sorry, no points can be awarded for that. All right, but you are still in control of the board.
We're going to go miscellaneous for 800.
Miscellaneous for 800, jumping some points. There we go. This is done when the facility is evacuated. Go ahead.
What is call 911?
I checked with the back. They are going to accept that answer. Wow. Okay. No, it is. It's right on the screen. You can see it. But there is an absolutely more correct answer. And when we add to this is not only call 911, but have presence of mind that if you've been out there for a while and nobody's shown up, it's okay to call again. We have had systems where the monitoring company failed, something happened at the fire station. Call again if you need to, okay? Make sure that you are outside when you do this, though. We want you getting down, getting out, getting the individuals out, and making that call. So good answer, good point. You are now still in control of the board. 600, miscellaneous. Information to be provided at next level notification. I'm sorry, too much time. Okay?
Address everything. Like you're on a 911 call.
Now, let's be honest here, okay? Is it possible that you could get mandated to a place that you've never been before and don't know the address?
Yes.
Absolutely. And everybody in here just agreed with me. It does happen. We listen to the 911 tapes when people call in, and we will actually have somebody say, I don't know where I am. Or they'll say the program name and not the physical address.
Sure.
Or they say the house that they normally work at. Okay? So all these things happen. We've even heard somebody go, hey, what's the address here? We've actually heard that on the 911 call. And that's not to poke fun, because it's a reality. It could happen to any one of us, okay? So here's some things: facility address, time of the fire, approximately. Now, once again, we're making this notification afterwards. We're outside and we're calling the AOD or the next level notification, okay? That's what we're doing. We're gonna let them know. If there were any injuries, if there was any damage, who a contact person is, and a number so they can call back if there's some more information they need to get from you at the house. Name of the responding fire department if you know, because we can reach out and get information from them. If the building's reoccupied, where were people, or if it's not reoccupied, where were people relocated to? All that information needs to be communicated upwards. And basically what you don't realize is happening is behind the scenes we are spinning up support for you, okay? So we are reaching out to grab every person that we can in the local area to immediately surround you with all the help that we can possibly give you, because it's a tough circumstance and we want to be able to do that rapidly. This kind of information makes it possible for us to do that, to get you relief, to get people to where you're at so that you can get help, because it is such a tough deal. Okay? Makes sense? All right. I'm sorry no points were awarded, but you are still in control of the board. We've only got a couple more categories left. We have one emergency types, fire alarm, evacuation drills.
Evacuation drills for 600.
For 600, here we go. The drill cuts down on complacency. I'm sorry, time's up. You just said it a minute ago. What is a blocked exit drill? Once again, it changes our rotation, right? So we're not used to doing that. It makes us less complacent. Okay, good deal. Good answer on that earlier. All right, so you're still in control?
Fire alarm for 400.
Fire alarm for 400. This entity authorizes personnel to re-enter a building after a fire alarm.
Who is the fire chief? Or the one that responds?
Absolutely right. What is the fire department? They are what they call the authority having jurisdiction. There are parts in the state where it's not the fire department, but traditionally for us, in this part of the state specifically, it is the fire department on scene. They make sure the building is fire safe or emergency safe, and then they authorize you to go back in. Nice job, sir. Good point for you. You guys are still in control. You are in control of the board.
Same. 600.
Fire alarm for 600. Here we go. The final step before returning to normal after a fire alarm activation. Okay.
Do a sweep of the house and make sure everything is working, and turn off the fire alarms.
Okay, that's a really big answer. Let me check in the back. Hold on a second. They are going to accept it. They are going to accept it because one of the key things you mentioned was the alarm. So one of the things that we have to do is ensuring that the panel is reset. Very important, right? Because if we silence that alarm, the fire department silences that alarm, what does that alarm think?
It's off.
I'm off. Woohoo! I got to work, right? So all I'm going to do is sit here and do nothing. So if it's never reset and the monitoring company doesn't recognize that it's not reset, who's protected in the house? Nobody. And you can go for a while and have an emergency and not have that. And everybody goes, Leon, the monitoring company is going to catch it. 99% of the time, the monitoring company does catch it, but sometimes they don't. And it's that one time that we're going to have that drip in the closet onto the mop, and it's going to be a bad thing, okay? So keep that in mind. Make sure that we reset the system, everything is back in line, and we confirm it with the monitoring company, all right? Good answer. You are in control. 800. Here we go. The difference in sound between a CO detector and a smoke detector. Go ahead.
What is the smoke detector has 3 continuous beeps, and the monoxide has 4.
Absolutely correct. Very good job. All right. Now, is there some times where we hear beep? And your
battery.
It's the battery, okay? So most detectors, right, if you have the kind that have a battery system, they're not hardwired in. Most of them have a chart on the back of it that tells you what each one of those sounds means, okay? So be familiar with that. Most of our residences all have hardwired ones. We still do have some that have the battery kind or the wireless interlinked kind. So just keep that in mind and know that as well, all right? Very good job. So to left, you're still in control. Evacuation drill for 800. This happens twice a year, once on night shift and once on some other shift.
What is a supervised, unannounced drill?
Absolutely correct. Another way of saying that is what is administrative observed drill. Very well done. Correct answer. Okay. They will come out periodically and check at it. All right. All right, and the final category, we are on camera. All right, last one, emergency types for 800. Here we go. Natural disasters, weather emergencies.
What is tornado, snowstorm, flood?
Absolutely correct for the final answer. You get the points for that. And I know that's one of the ones most people go, what? All right. Look, that's a fun way to cover more information. Look, I really appreciate you being here today. The idea behind this is just to say, hey, there's some stuff we've got to pay attention to. And I know you guys work very hard. And we established earlier, sometimes you're mandated 1-2 shifts. Stay present. Pay attention to what's going on around you when it comes to fire safety and other types of emergencies, as we just learned here again. To protect yourselves, first of all, and then the people that we support. So thank you for everything that you do. Appreciate your attendance today, and that concludes your training for this year.
Thank you.